so that way we can make this recording available to others and to you later via our website. So I just want to jump right in and say first, thanks to Matt Varney for joining us from ICF. And he is the Global Strategic Director for ICF. And you may have seen him around, seen his picture, different places, heard his name, but I'm glad that he is able to join us today. And so we're just going to jump right in. The first half hour, we're just going to spend some time talking all things ICF. So if you have any questions or anything that you need feedback on from ICF or understanding ICF policies, procedures, whatever it is, anything ICF, and I'm sure Matt might have some things that he'll share as well. But anyway, we're going to provide opportunity for that. If you can, do me a huge favor. We want to be respectful of Matt's time and everyone else's time on the call. So if you have a question that you would like to ask, try submitting it via the chat. I'll be watching the chat as we go along. So if you have a question, feel free to share it there, and I'll try to catch those and get those to Matt as they come up. So that way we can kind of manage everyone's time in case there's an overwhelming response. But anyway, thanks again for joining. Matt, thanks for being here. And let's see here. We should be able to unmute you and get you.
Yeah, I think that worked.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, Zach. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm really happy to join this discussion. Really happy to answer any questions I can. I think one of the something I've always said about my role is that I absolutely don't know everything, but I definitely know where to find it if I don't. So hopefully I'll be able to answer a number of your questions here and redirect any questions that you have that may be outside my breadth of knowledge, but I will definitely do my best. And thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Does anyone have a question that you'd like to start with? Is anyone burning to get a question in? Just remember to unmute yourself. Matt, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about, and I anticipated we might have to get the conversation started, but I know there's been we have fielded a lot of questions regarding credentialing. What's that process? What's the credentialing process? I know there's been some changes. Can you talk to us a little bit about credentialing?
Sure. One thing I do want to highlight when we're talking about credentialing, something of a milestone that we've just passed as far as ICF goes. We currently have over 25,000 active credential holders around the world right now. It's a milestone we've never hit, something we just passed about a week and a half ago, having that 25,000th credential holder who actually lives in Germany. This is and something to highlight in that's 25,000 active credential holders. That's credential holders who are currently holding an ICF credential. That doesn't count all of the credential holders that have come before. Huge number, and definitely indicative of the global recognition for the ICF credentials at all three levels, really, around the world. Because I will say about 8 years ago, we had a fraction of that. I will say a quarter of that. I know when George Rogers, the Assistant Executive Director of Credentialing, joined the ICF about 11, 12 years ago, we had 3,000 credential holders. So you can see this exponential growth and recognition of what that credential means to professional coaching. That recognition is really important to us. And as you highlighted there, Zach, there have been a number of changes to the credentialing process over the years, and that's really to protect that robust nature that a credential should have. The challenges to the process. Does this credential truly prove that the person who holds it is at a higher level? Does it represent the amount of training and investment of time and practicum that is involved in achieving a credential? Does it adequately represent that? And that's so. Anytime you see changes to the credentialing process, it is about sustaining this rigor around a credential, so that it does justify the work and investment that goes into it at every individual's level.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions specifically about credentialing? Maybe something that you have personally? Matt just had a question that came through on the chat. Can you describe the different types of credential levels, MCC, PCC, and where should someone start? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the three levels of credentialing, the ACC, the PCC, and the MCC, really focus on different levels of training, amounts of training, hours of training, and that level of practicum, the number of hours that people have logged in their client log to achieve that level of credential. Where people start largely depends on how people experience that the first time. A lot of times, most people will be experiencing, coach training for the very first time. They may be introducing themselves to the world of professional coaching for the first time. So starting at that first level, the ACC, is kind of a natural starting point. I will say, though, to partake in some of our approved coach training programs, and those are training programs that are providing coach training around the world that have gone through the process of being approved. The curriculum is evaluated according to ICF standards, and those are third-party training programs that receive that ACTP distinction. When you go through an ACTP program, the approach, you're much more closer to, as far as the training requirements, to that PCC level, and just involves a higher level of practicum than additional numbers of coaching hours in your log to approach the PCC level. And again, we also have people who have been coaching a very long time, have tremendous amount of experience in training, and haven't explored the credential until that point. Some people come in as an MCC. They have the coach hours that they require to achieve that. They have the training required to achieve that, so they come in at that level. So the question is, which is the best one to start with? It really depends on a person's experience and training level as they approach the credentialing process.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Great question that just came through. What's the reciprocity for other trainings there? Let's say it's not an ICF school, or maybe like a board certified coach. How does that work?
The board certified coach is a credential that's operated, of course, by a different organization that has a different application for requirements, is the word I was looking for. Different level of requirements as far as training that comes to it. BCC is something that we are aware of, that we recognize is out there. They have a different level of requirements to achieve that credential. And Zach, to your point, the question around training programs that don't hold that the distinction of being an approved coach training program, those are still valid training sources for coaches who are seeking credential. We have what is called a portfolio path, and that is the credentialing path to for people who have taken training that's outside of that approved coach training program. Training programs that we haven't previously evaluated their curriculum. Sorry. So that's kind of a different path, but still applicable. As people follow that portfolio path to credential, basically with their application for that credential, the training that they received is evaluated at that time. So the criteria are evaluated through the application of the individual for a training program that just hasn't been looked at previously.
Awesome. And so BCC, just to clarify for everyone, the board certified is not an ICF credential. But can you talk about what is the ACC? As you mentioned, I think we've got some folks on the line today that are not ICF yet credentialed.
Right. Yeah.
Looking for some definitions there. What's ACC, PCC, NCC?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just looking to see if we might have a little bit of a visual for this that might be a bit helpful. Something I defer to when it comes to credentialing. Credentialing, and, one of the questions I saw in the chat, um, is it difficult to attain an ICF credential? And difficulty, it kind of depends on your perspective. Again, we don't want it to be something that people can just walk in off the street. Just like if you walked into a doctor's office and there weren't diplomas from universities on the wall, you've kind of questioned, is this a real doctor? So this is the level of credibility that the ICF credentials are representing for professional coaches globally. So there is a stringent process of applying for credentials that depends on, that we have a good level of accountability for the preparedness. If someone is representing themselves as a professional certified coach, are they truly meeting the criteria of a professional certified coach? So it is a stringent process. There's a good deal of rigor to it. But there is that for people who go through coach training programs and do the work and go through it, we have a very high percentage of pass rates for the evaluation process. So as people come to that process prepared, they do very well when it comes for the coach knowledge assessment and the application process. So I wanted to share my screen here really quickly. The question was around the different degrees of credentialing. I know everybody that is on the phone won't be able to see this, but the recording hopefully will capture it. So if you go to the ICF website and you click on the ICF credential tab, there is, and scroll down a little bit, there is a source for each of the 3 credentialing paths. And you can kind of see the differences here. The ACC, which is the Associate Certified Coach, requires 60 hours of coach training to apply and 100 hours of coaching experience. The PCC, which is the Professional Certified Coach, requires 125 hours of training to apply, 500 hours of coaching experience. And the MCC, the Master Certified Coach, requires 200 plus hours of training to apply and 2,500 hours of coaching experience. So you can see that it just kind of depends as how people approach the credentialing path and where they've come from, how much experience they have in both the practicum of the experience and the training hours, really kind of define what level they're at and where they can enter that process.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt, for that. Let me ask you this. I know sometimes in our U.S. world, we kind of lose sight of the bigger picture, what ICF is doing globally. Maybe you could talk just a minute about, the global recognition that is out there with the credential in ICF.
Sure. Yeah. And use that word global, and that's something that we take very, very seriously. ICF is the truly global professional in the world. And so we have 32,000 members in over 140 countries. As a member of one of our ICF chapters, we have 145, I believe, chapters in over 75 countries around the world. So this is truly a global movement. And so the recognition of ICF coaches and the credentialing process around the world, we've seen this being adopted as a standard in governments around the world. We're seeing it adopted in NGOs around the world. Both the public and private sector are recognizing ICF credentialing and the standards of even ICF membership to be the criteria benchmark that can assure this level of training and the level of experience that we just highlighted in some of the credentialing paths. So that is something that's being recognized around the world consistently. We have, as ICF, we have relationships with UNICEF We have relationships with the United Nations. We have relationships with the European Union. We're seeing coaching grow in areas of the world that several years ago it was not noticeably present. We are seeing communities grow throughout the Middle East. We're seeing communities emerge and grow in a recognition of coaching through sub-Saharan Africa. We're seeing coaching grow in organizations overwhelmingly throughout Eastern Europe and Asia. And specifically, when we see those spaces, we also recognize that the leadership of a lot of those organizations tend to be much younger. You're seeing CEOs emerge in their 30s and 40s, so they're exploring different paradigms for training and development within organizations that is very inclusive of coaching. So we're seeing a lot of different elements of recognition of what coaching can bring to individuals and organizations alike, and that's been really positive for us.
That's awesome. Great to hear. What about mastermind groups or special interest groups in ICF community?
Sure. What we have is what we've termed communities of practice, and the ICF communities of practice follow a number of different topics. We have coaching in government. We have ethics focused. We have a number of different topics. I can go through that in front of me, but they are really global, represented as people, virtual meeting spaces that are focused on a select topic. And those meetings happen periodically. And again, through the ICF website, you can explore those communities of practice and access those, kind of log in and get all the information for when those discussions happen. But it's been a really quickly growing communities under those topics. We see some of those discussions, several hundred people are joining at a time. So that's been a really interesting phenomenon as people dig into a specific niche within the professional coaching world or a different topic. That's provided a great resource for continuing education as well.
Awesome. How is ICF marketing not just the global, but maybe even the chapter involvement?
Yeah, marketing and PR around the world are really full-time job as far as it goes for a global organization. We utilize our chapters around the world as kind of our eyes and ears, where we can plug into the discussion. What's currently happening within coaching in Argentina? What's currently happening within coaching in Italy? What's currently happening coaching in Cleveland? So as we, having this truly global network and unique perspectives that happen locally, it gives us the best point of entry or best way to identify where does that PR, where does that story best land? How do we best tell the story of what's happening with ICF globally? So we utilize the chapters, we utilize our local communities heavily to identify those places. We have a constant ongoing PR machine. We engage with a PR firm that is out of Washington, D.C., a global PR firm that really identifies and highlights when coaching is even mentioned, whether that's through traditional media, social media, and really triggering this PR machine to capitalize when coaching is being highlighted, whether that's in a really positive way or a negative way, to be able to be involved in that discussion in the best way possible to provide the most amount of information, education, and awareness of what professional coaching is wherever it's happening around the world.
Awesome. This is a great question that just popped up, and we have had conversations about this recently, so I think it's a great question to bring up, and that is, how does ICF work to ensure diversity within the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. As far as diversity goes, it is one of the most inclusive organizations I have ever had the pleasure of being a part of. We are actively researching and identifying ways to tell the story of ICF in every corner of the world, and that is to just bring in, and expose people to coaching. The one thing that is we've kind of stuck with this theme of International Coaching Week for the last few years. It's been the same theme each year. And for those of you that don't know, International Coaching Week happens in May of every year. And it's an opportunity of a lot of our local communities and global communities to get coaching out in front of people. And the theme for International Coaching Week each year is experience coaching. And the opportunity for people to engage with coaching, whether they haven't had access to it, they have experienced something different that's been called coaching. They have an impression of coaching that isn't necessarily what coaching is, or have engaged with coaches and they really enjoy it. And the opportunity to plug into a different iteration of this is really beneficial. But that has been a large focus for ICF over the past few years, especially. How do we get coaching into communities? How do we connect coaching with people who aren't necessarily connected to it already, and to help educate and to help highlight what the benefits of professional coaching can bring to any relationship. So with that, we've seen this pop up. There's a term called Coach a Latte in one of the chapters in North America, where they kind of take over a coffee shop and just set up shop at the tables and offer people, you buy a $5 cup of coffee, you also get a quick coaching session. So it's an ability to check in with coaching and see how that may resonate for individuals who may never experienced it before. They may have just showed up for a cup of coffee and just lucked into a coaching session. Those type of environments, those type of spaces where we can expose people to coaching that weren't just readily available, what it might offer to them personally.
Awesome. You mentioned something, Matt, that I thought was interesting that we've had conversation about, in Cleveland a couple of times, and that is this idea of people who call themselves coaches but don't have credentials. And what advice can you give to us? How do we handle that? How do we represent our community? How do we do this better so that those who are maybe operating as quote coaches without credentials, how do we handle that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Something that comes up repeatedly on our global coaching study. We have a tremendous amount of industry research and scientific research about the coaching profession, about coaching itself, available on the ICF website as well. The global coaching study is something we've done every couple of years for the last 10 or 12 years. And the number one threat to coaching as an organization, as a profession, is overwhelmingly highlighted to be these others, the people who are coaching without training, who are coaching, calling themselves coaches but not coaching. Those type of things are really diluting the perception of what professional coaching is. So I would say that that is one of the bigger issues that we are facing globally as a profession, as an organization, and it's an opportunity to educate, and that's the way we look at it, and that's the way we kind of approach it. The International Coach Federation is only about 23 years old. The term coaching as we know it now really got more of a definition around that time. So if we're looking at, by comparison to other professions, we're looking at comparison to other organizations, we're still very new to this. So there's a lot of opportunity to educate what it is that we're doing, who we are, what is the mission of this, what do we look to achieve. That is really gaining a lot of traction as a result of these education efforts. But it's dependent on how we talk about it in our individual spaces. How do you talk about professional coaching with your clients? How do you talk about ICF with your clients? Do you talk about ICF with your clients? Because we are truly a global organization, but that global nature of it and the strength of that comes from the 32,000 individuals that we have, kind of flying the ICF flag above their businesses and above their person. So it's interesting to hear how people talk about these things with their clients. How is every individual aiding in supporting this this education process? Though one story that I've heard that really resonates with me is it circles around the language that we use when we talk to individuals. When people ask, it always happens. You meet someone new, whether that's at a cocktail reception or in the elevator, and they ask, what do you do? And there's always this opportunity to tell your story, but you only have so much time. Otherwise they're going to wander off or stumble onto a YouTube video or something, so you've got to really capture their attention and keep that conversation going. And the one thing that I've heard repeatedly is when people say, well, what do you do? The answer is, I'm a professional coach, or I'm an ICF coach. Because that, kind of triggers questions after that. What does that mean? Professional coach. What's the difference between a professional coach and a coach? Or if you say, I'm an ICF coach, they say, what's ICF? Tell me more about that. So leading the discussion, leading the kind of triggering these probing questions from the other person and stimulating that conversation creates a space to educate around what the difference is. And that I've heard is incredibly effective, both in engaging people as you kind of walk down the street. And then the other part is it does create a space and people are curious. People want to learn. People want to understand. So it creates a space that can happen. And if we have that happening, 32,000 times globally every day, you can just imagine the impact that's going to have in an understanding.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Matt. Just leading with, I'm an ICF coach, and like you said, flying the flag. I like that. It's great. Educate. Samantha has a great question here. If she has she's a PhD student in organizational behavior, and is interested in conducting research within ICF on coaching practices, specifically around coaches' feelings, practices around diversity, inclusion issues. What are your recommendations? How should she proceed? How does she gain access? How she step into this research field within ICF?
Sure. Yeah. Samantha, you would love to chat with my friend Joel. Joel is our director of coaching science, who works for the ICF, and he's a researcher himself. And he has created this amazing research pull through the ICF website. His contact message or his contact information is up there on the website. I can send it through here in the chat really quick. So I send you his email address. Drop him a line. He's always eager to talk about research opportunities. It's his passion. And so you're going to find the greatest resource in ICF on research opportunities with Joel. So I'll pop that here in the chat real quick.
Awesome. Any other questions before we move along? Any other feedback from anyone? This is another question, Matt, that's come in while you're typing. Has ICF ever considered recognizing life experience as a valid type of professional experience or training as preparation for coaching? A person in business consulting may have had multiple training sessions and listening skills, for example, or a corporate professional salesperson may have experienced a few hundred interviews. So the question is here, is there a life experience recognition?
Recognition, absolutely. Qualifications for credentialing and substitute for training requirements. As we a more structured credentialing process. But I will say that I have met coaches around the world who come from every different background, every different previous career experience, life experience, and all of that builds an incredibly robust community of professional coaches. That what people bring to coaching is equally as important as the coach training that they receive or the coaching hours that they log in there. There's an incredible amount of perspective that people bring as individuals to coaching that I think is something that's absolutely celebrated within ICF. It's not going to be substituted for a training requirement, but I think it's very, very important. And it's something that I absolutely enjoy engaging with coaches and hearing the stories that have brought them to coaching. And so we absolutely encourage it and celebrate it. But as far as a requirement, it's probably not going to go that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think we see that even, I don't know if Dennis is involved in a particular chapter, but we see that in our chapter in Cleveland, just the diversity of backgrounds and experiences that people bring to the table. And they bring that into our conversation. So it may not fulfill a training requirement, but it definitely enhances that. I know at least within our chapter, it enhances our chapter as well. Last question for you, Matt, here is are the dues going to be increasing, and what causes that change, if there is a change? What precipitates that?
Yeah, we last increased the global dues, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and prior to that, they hadn't had an increase in 8 years. So it's not something that increases frequently, but it is based on, if you look at the cost of doing business over time, 8 years can change the impact of what it takes to get the job done. So the process of evaluating any dues increase, and again, as infrequent as they are, it's based on an evaluation of cost of doing business. What's the need? What's the opportunity with that? And what's the realistic, so that we are very, very inclusive, because the dues right now annually are $245 US. Which means $245 US in the United States, but means a whole lot more in different parts of the world. So that's really, really an impact in evaluating how often and how much we increase dues, and balancing that with the cost of doing business. And the global board of directors is as the decision makers of the organization, kind of pass the final decision on when and if we raise those dues, but I will say it is really heavily weighed on the ability of people to afford to become part of the organization.
Awesome. Any other thoughts, Matt, that you might have, or anything else that maybe we missed that's really important here?
One of the first things you said, Zach, was how being aware of that bigger picture, being aware that you are, as a member, you're a part of a truly, truly global movement, and tremendously well respected, and a whole lot of excitement and passion around the world around this. So it's an exciting time to be a coach, an exciting time to be part of the ICF. And you really have the strength of an entire global community pushing professional coaching further into the future, and all of the good things that come with that.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Amy asked us, do you have time for one more?
Sure.
He asked regarding the 60 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, why don't you just chime in so we can get that out?
I'm not a super fast typer. So my question is with regards to the 60 required hours. On the website, it says that CCE credits qualify for membership in ICF, but for the ACC portfolio path, it's a little less clear to me, because it says it's 60 coach trained hours, and then it also has to demonstrate that the program covered the core competencies. And I do have I have more than 60 hours in ICF qualified CCEs, and I did go through a training program, but it wasn't an ICF accredited training program. And I know people many of those hours. And so I'm just wondering how that works. And so I'm clear on ICF membership. I'm just wondering, for the ACC portfolio path, what is the process I need to go through to make sure, or to see how many of my hours would qualify for the accreditation, and what order you would do it? Like, would you first submit the program and then take the knowledge assessment, or, what's the order of everything?
Sure. That's a great question. The continuing coach education units, using those, and or the non-approved coach training for the training requirements, does put you in that portfolio path. As far as the core competency, if it's core competency focused, then it can accumulate to the hours that are required there. And then as far as the the application, if there's an opportunity there to download a sample application in a PDF, so you can kind of look at the explanation that comes with that as far as the steps that come with it. When you submit or you pay for the application, you basically get the application instructions for the steps and the link to that coach knowledge assessment all at one time. So that would be the stages that you kind of go through in the application process.
So just to clarify, so the first step is to go online and pay for the application, download it, and then I would submit the documentation I have for my coach training, and it will get evaluated.
Correct. Yeah, as part of that application process. So you can download an example of the application without paying, so you can kind of get a sense of what the expectations are and so forth. And then once you pay for the application, you get the actual application with the process to submit your training, the training requirements, so forth, and a link to that coach knowledge assessment to complete that all at the same time. Sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, no worries.
Let you jump off. I'm sure you have many things you still need to do today.
I appreciate it. And like I said, thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you all. And Dennis, I see your question about certified training providers. On the ICF website, there is a training provider search service that you can even search by focus of those training providers, length of time, the training offerings, a number of different drop-down options to send those through. If there are any more questions about those things, feel free to shoot me over a question or anything, and I'll be happy to help. Zach, if you want to send my email address to all the participants and stuff, be happy to answer any questions after the call. So,
thanks, Matt.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope that was beneficial for everyone. I'm sure it was. A lot of great information there from Matt. Matt's a great guy. And I just want to acknowledge, too, that ICF provides great support to all of the coaches around the world. And they do that through, of course, we have our local chapters. If you're not involved in a local chapter, I would encourage you to do so. If you're in the Cleveland area, feel free to join us. One of our members is going to share. Tesha, why don't you continue the conversation? We started this dialogue in our last chapter meeting about the power of dreams in coaching. So can you just jump right on in there and continue that thought from our last chapter meeting?
Certainly. Thank you, Zach. We had a very spirited discussion around dreams in last month's meeting. And one of the things that I was sharing with the chapter was that Will Sharon was the coach that presented a session on dream work for coaches at the ICF Midwest Regional Conference in June in Pittsburgh. And I was really fascinated by what he was talking about and sharing, because I've always found dreams to be something that is certainly speaking to other things that are happening in our lives, and how can we really kind of begin to interpret and decipher what our dreams are trying to tell us. And he did suggest the importance of writing down your dreams to be able to kind of take and digest what those dreams might be speaking to in terms of what's happening in a relationship or at work in your life. A few things that I'll just reiterate that he shared in the session that you might find somewhat useful. Talked a lot about how neuroscience is certainly impacting coaching much more today, and some of the things that he mentioned about dreams in particular. He said in dream work, we need to ask whether we dream because of a chemical process in the brain, or does the brain exhibit a chemical process because we dream? So we can hypothesize about it. It's important to understand that neuroscience is really in its infancy, and absolute truths are probably decades away from happening right now. But in his experience, he felt that dreams are usually not about what we want or what we think. They're about what we need. I shared with the members that all of the coaches at the conference offered a complimentary 30-minute coaching session if you wanted to take advantage of that with them. And I could do that with Will over the phone. And he has a clinical So in some ways, it felt a little like therapy, but also kind of like coaching. But he just asked me to kind of help him understand some of the things I've been dreaming about, to help me maybe uncover what dreams were telling me, because I've been having a recurring dream myself. And it was really rather useful to receive some coaching specifically around this topic, which was for me a communication gap that I was having. And it really caused me to think a little bit more about how I might handle that particular interaction that I needed to have with someone. So I can see the real value of how you might use coaching to support people understanding their dreams and what that can really do for them. Something else that you might find interesting that I've done since the meeting. Online class. So, of course, and there is a Young Society of Washington, D.C. And Dr. James Hollis is a fairly prominent young disciple, I will say. He's written a number of books. I think it's fantastic. And he facilitates this online course on dreams. And I'm just kind of in the introductory stages, but some of the things that he has been talking about, dreams are a product of your deepest nature. Is there a possibility to have a larger conversation around the meaning of our journey based on what we're dreaming about, actually? So he said if you want to take your dreams seriously, you write them down, and Will Sharon talked about this as well. If you're trying to kind of track the images that are coming up in your dreams, you'll see over time that a narrative is really unfolding. So we have to start dealing with the fact that there is some other center of knowing or some place of awareness that's really observing our life, and understand how it's unfolding and making some commentary about it. So it makes sense to really kind of stop and take time to pay attention to that commentary. We'll kind of refer to this almost like a pack rat. There is a pack rat in your life that's helping by observing these dreams and bringing things to life for you to be able to better interpret and perhaps apply. So I would encourage you, if you're kind of curious about dreams and you just want to explore the different kinds of dreams and a little bit more of the history around them, this course might be an interesting one to take. So if you go to the Young Society of Washington's website, you'll be able to enroll in that course. I will also add that Will is also offering a Dream Work for Coaches class. It's 6 virtual courses. It starts October 16th, goes through November 20th. If you attended the ICF Midwest Conference, it's $350. If you didn't, it's $395. I don't know if the class is full yet. I think 12 people is the max that you can have in the session, but I'm also going to take that course. You'll be paired up with another person in the class and be able to, I think, share your dreams and get some coaching from someone else. But I'm really excited about kind of taking that class and really digging into this a little bit more. So I'm not going to sit up here and profess that I'm any kind of an expert on being a dream coach, but I will say my husband has been having some kind of a recurring but I asked him what he about I haven't probed further on that. But I'm eager to kind of test some of that out with him while I take this course and maybe help him work through some of whatever is happening at night for him. So interesting in terms of a recurring symbol. I'm happy to take any questions that folks may have, or if you've been doing some dreaming and you're trying to maybe understand something that is surfacing in your dreams that might be important to you. Of course, it does rely on sometimes when you're dreaming, people don't always remember right away. So that's what necessitates the writing down. So if you're a person that does tend to be able to jot some thoughts down and in the middle of the night and try to decipher them later, it can be useful.
Awesome. If anyone who's watching the video later, how can they contact you if they have questions about this?
Yeah, I put my email in the chat box here, and people can certainly feel free to send me a note, send me a question. If you want some more details about either of the two online courses that I mentioned, I can forward those websites to you as well, and you can explore those, and maybe we'll be in the class together.
Awesome. Awesome. Simon, as we're wrapping up today, you're our membership chair. And how does one get involved in our chapter? What does it look like to be involved in the chapter? What's important about being involved in a chapter? Can you just share with us a little bit before we leave? You're on mute.
Is that through you or me? Am I on mute now?
You're unmuted.
Okay, good. So our chapter is based in Cleveland, but we cover quite an area that's a bit bigger than Cleveland. And we accept members who are both ICF members and ICF members, but you can be a member of our chapter without joining ICF, although we would prefer you to join ICF, obviously. Our chapter meets generally on the second Friday of the month. So we're going to be meeting next Friday, a week tomorrow. Meetings generally take place from about 7:45 a.m. through to it's normally about 10 a.m. I think they're a bit longer than 2 hours. We have been in the past concentrating on ICF core competencies as the presentations for our membership, but we have a new programming team that recently came in, and we're starting to diversify a bit more about the presentations that we're doing. In June, we actually did some experiential learning, some coaching outdoors that involved fly fishing and dance, and we're beginning to mix it up a bit. Generally at our meetings, we'll probably get, 30 plus people coming, coaches from all different areas of coaching. We have business coaches, life coaches, health coaches. It covers the whole gamut. So that in a thumbnail is what we're about. Obviously, anyone that is on this call that is not already a member of the chapter, we'd love to invite you along. If you want to come along as a visitor, then I believe it's $25 for a visitor. So you can come and try it out if you don't want to commit to the full amount straight away. But if you come along, pay the visitor's fee, and then join on the day, we will give you your visitor's money back. So it's almost like a bit of a discount on your membership. Anything else that I need to cover, Zach?
I think that's great. And then if anyone has any questions about membership or our chapter, anything that we're doing, feel free to give us a shout out via email. I'll throw up my email address on the chat box. Feel free to shoot me an email, and we'll answer any questions that you might have. Also, if you have any ICF related questions, you can email. You can go on ICF's website and contact them directly via the contact information that's there, or you can also shoot me an email and I can help point you in the right direction. So thanks for joining us today. Those that have joined the call, I know people have been off and on throughout the call, and of course then this video will be made available to our chapter via our website. So thank you again. Appreciate everyone's time. Our next webinar like this will be on October 8th. It's always the October 4th. It's the first Thursday of every month. So October 4th from 3 to 4, and we'll be having a conversation about marketing with Tina Waskovich, who is a part of our chapter, who spent many, many years in the marketing sector. And so she is going to bring her vast knowledge of marketing resources to our conversation about being coaches. So you don't want to miss that. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.